This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Alrighty. There he is, flexing and ready to go. How you feeling, dude?
I'm good, man. Got a workout in this morning. Ran a little long, so I think last time I took a shower before and I was a little later. So this time I wanted to hop in fresh off the workout, so I'll be closer on time.
I appreciate you taking the time, so thank you, sir. Although the season is ending like every other Dolphin season ends, and oh man, it's almost a shame because instead of ending with a lot of positive vibes, unfortunately it looks like unless you pull out a miracle on Saturday, we're going to be heading into an off season of a lot of questions.
Yeah, Sunday was rough because I think all season you were just planning to win a playoff game until the point of you realized the division was very much in hand. And they were up 3 games with 5 games left. There's no other thing to call it other than a collapse for the division, right? Like they collapsed down the stretch. They lost, and you can say what you want. There were difficult teams on the schedule, Baltimore, Buffalo, I get it, but they collapsed. And it's a weird feeling when you collapse, but then still have a game left, right? And I talked about it on NFL Network yesterday. I walked into the locker room, and it felt like a season-ending loss. Like it felt like guys are just, silent. I didn't hear a pin drop, guys looking at their phones, guys not really. It just felt like the end, right? Because you put everything towards winning the division. And it's like, man, we failed. The reality is they still do have another game left. They're going to Kansas City, and it's whatever chances you think they have is still a chance. Now, the injuries, every injury piles up, and it's like, man, this makes it harder and harder. But I will say this Chiefs team's not the team that they've been in recent years. And so because of that, I don't think you can rule them out yet. But I will say, like, it's hard. I'd imagine this is a hard week for the Dolphins, like to smile, to have optimism after what happened in back-to-back weeks in different fashions, right? You get blown out by the Baltimore, and it sort of questions your ceiling. Like, can we legitimately win the Super Bowl after you get blown out by Baltimore? I think the conclusion is like, hey, maybe this is not a Super Bowl winning team. But then you go to Buffalo, you're like, man, but if we beat Buffalo, at least we can do it.
It ain't a Super Bowl winning coach. It ain't a playoff winning coach.
So we're going to get to McDaniel. But I want to say this. But if they were able to salvage that Bills game and potentially, I guess it would have been the Bills next week again, but potentially win a playoff game, even if it wasn't a Super Bowl winning team, if they made progress, you can go into the offseason and feel good about yourself. If they end up losing this week in Kansas City, which they are underdogs and people expect them to lose, they would have done the exact same finish as last year, essentially. Collapsing down the stretch, losing the division, losing their first playoff game. And the only real difference that you can maybe hold your hat on is that Tua stayed healthy the whole season. The offense, numbers-wise, was better. Right. But everything else, you can't really – there's nothing really you can go into the offseason and say, we made growth in this.
Nope. Yeah. Not even the coach grew. And that's the sad part, that he made all the same mistakes from last year. And even though they ran the ball a little bit more, he still, in this game, this past week, he abandoned the run in the second half. I mean, dude, he starts the game with a pass. And, on the second down, there's Achane with a 16-yard run. And it's like, dude, keep it simple, stupid. It's Kiss.
Yeah.
We all know what you had to do here. Just run. Why didn't you just open up the game with a run? He has an option play with Achane. You're like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? It's just, this is constant. And to me, it's funny because McDaniel's likable. We know he's smart. We know he's got a bright mind for designing offenses and all of that. But we have learned now in 2 years that his awareness as a head coach is not a good one. I'll give you another thing that happened in that game. So Tyreek didn't catch the ball. I get it. You suck at reviews. Your person up there must suck at reviews. The coach down there is always smart and sharp football team. You're running to the line and trying to snap the ball as quickly as possible to not even give McDermott time to think about it. Brother, they had a lackadaisical approach, like taking it to the next down, and they even popped in a short commercial, and right in the middle of that play, and then came back, and McDermott was able to throw in. And at least if you rushed to the line and tried and got busted that they threw it, at least I understand you're sharp, you're on top of your game. You're not even on top of your game, dude. In no way, shape, or form is Mike McDaniel on top of his game. And then on top of all of that, while we know he's a beautiful play designer at times, he's really not a complimentary coach to your players, okay? Because one of the things that I think he's developing in Tua is bad habits. Tua's now forcing it into double and triple coverage into Tyreek or Waddle. Too many interceptions, too many dumb throws. That throw that he threw to Claypool at the end, that was a dumb throw. There was no reason to throw that ball. And so he is now developing bad habits. I'll give you an example. They take the 21-14 lead. On the first play from the 25, what does McDaniel call? A 25-yard play down to the middle of the field where Tyreek is at, and you're asking the quarterback to throw it in between two or three guys.
Right.
So Tua has to start thinking for himself at times and change plays. Whether he pisses off the coach, too bad. But you can't do everything the coach wants you to do, because if you remember, Warren Sharp last year had a graph on the most difficult passes and who had the most difficult passing game for the quarterback. And Tua was all by himself in that quarter. And so, like leaving Chubb on the field, like abandoning the run, he can compliment you and he can hurt you as a player too at the same time in different positions, not just Tua. Like I told you, with the Chubb stuff, with the running game, there are things that he just doesn't have great awareness. And I think he's hurting his players sometimes as much as he helps them.
So Mike McDaniel is aggressive in nature as a coach, right? And I think we talked about this before. It's interesting because early in the season, you're overwhelmingly praised for it, right? Because they score 70 points. Tua's leading the NFL in yards per attempt, even though he has the shortest time to throw. That's an aggressive pass-first coaching nature, right? But when you get into December and January, these type of playoff teams where physicality becomes the identity, right? A lot of times we always talk about identity, and it's sort of a cliche for football. Like, what is your identity, right? But the Dolphins' identity, whether they like it or not, across the league, is that they're a finesse speed team.
Yeah,
they are a finesse speed team, and the Dolphins don't like it. Trust me. Mike McDaniel mentioned it earlier. You know, there's nothing soft about a team that runs the ball well, that stops the run well, and they do in spurts run the ball well and stop the ball well. The problem is, can you run the ball well when people know you're running the ball? Can you continue to run the ball when teams change their defensive plan? And for the Bills in particular game, that was an example of a team that run the ball for 100 yards in the first half. They had 8 yards in the second half. So what happened? Yes, there's less plays. Yes, there's less run calls. But the Bills decided we're going to play single high safety. We're going to move our defensive ends and play a lot more contain on the edges to stop the perimeter runs that HM was having. And they had early success doing it, and they stopped doing it. They lost confidence in that ability to run that game because the team switched, the defense switched its plan. And so I would like to see, if you're really the team that you say you are, that can handle the physicality, that can punch back, to keep staying with it, to show that you're not reactionary, that you don't just react because defense does this and we've got to go somewhere other route. Because what was troubling to me in that game, and I expect Kansas City to do it to an extent, is playing single high is essentially challenging a defense, saying that we don't think you can beat us with your passing game. And that's troubling because all season the Dolphins have been able to destroy teams who went man coverage, who went single high, right? And not having Waddle is probably a big factor of it. But if you're telling teams, if you're telling the offense that you don't believe they can pass on you, I think that's very dangerous because the Dolphins' backbone of their success this year is teams scared of them in the passing game. And so they're willing to give up the run. And that's a lot of the reason the run has been a lot of successful. If all of a sudden they think we're not scared of the pass, then what are they scared of? What is your calling card? What is your identity? Because in the playoffs, at least for me, speed can't be your only identity.
Yeah, but you have an identity. You just refuse to use it on a consistent basis.
Right. But my point is, it's not even their unwillingness to use it on a consistent basis. It's their unwillingness to use it when something changes, right? Like something changes, whether it be the defense changes, an injury happens and they change their plan. The score changes and they change their plan. Whatever happens in game that gets them off of maybe what they scripted, it does not seem like they're able to adjust in game. That to me has been the question mark that I have had. Of course, they make some adjustments, but it does not visibly look to me that, hey, the Bills decided to do this, so we're going to do this to counteract it, and our counteraction works better than their counteraction, if you know what I mean. And
I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
That's a big part of it. And let's call a spade, because I know Big O, you've talked about the coaching a lot, and Mike McDaniel deserves blame for this game. Like I consider them the trio, the trio that runs the offense: Tua, Mike, and Tyreek. Right, all three of those guys had subpar games. Tua threw 2 bad interceptions. Tyreek had multiple drops. Like Tyreek's been amazing, but he does not.
Hold on. Tua also underthrew that third down to Tyreek.
Yeah,
I don't blame that one on Tyreek. I blame the other one on Tyreek for sure, because Tyreek. It's just I don't know how it is that Tyreek and Waddle seem to be dropping balls and at the worst times, and they drop touchdowns. Right. I don't know why, but they do this way too much. You know what I'm saying? But
the reality is, guys.
Besides those 2 interceptions, underthrowing that third down was unacceptable.
He was unusually inaccurate. Like, I think you could have people have questions on Tua, right? People have questions on, can he make this outside throw, this, that, all the sort, whatever. To me, and we talked about this, what makes him special is his accuracy, his ability to make anticipation. When you start to struggle on those areas, that's when I get a little worried. And so, like, I'm not worried if he can hit a 30-yard deep out to the corner and whether or not it has the right velocity. That, like, I get some people get obsessed with that. That does not move the needle for me. But if you're missing passes that you're supposed to miss, there was a couple plays in that game where I think he was anticipating pressure before pressure actually got there and was getting the ball out too fast and threw some sidearm inaccurate passes. And I'm like, this is not what we saw in the first half of the season. That's troubling to me. And so it's tough because, you know, the team has optimism, but what else are they going to have like going into KC? But like, if you look on paper, they're playing the second best defense in football by the numbers in KC in a 8-degree temperature area, a team that's already beat them early in the season. And over the last month, the offense is playing probably their worst football of the season. And so it's hard on paper when you look at those 3 or 4 things to say, how do they come out and win this game? They're going to have to do something we haven't seen over the last month. That's as simple of it. And it's going to have to be on the offense with the defense injuries piling up. Like, the defense played well enough to win this past game, but now you lose Jerome Baker. Now you lose Andrew Van Ginkel. X is probably not playing. At some point it becomes too much to overcome. And even with the Chiefs' struggles, it's still Patrick Mahomes on that side of the ball. It's still Travis Kelce on that side of the ball. And I'd imagine that you're probably going to have to score in the high 20s or 30s to beat this team, just given the way the defensive injuries are piling up right now.
Does 2024 become a make or break year for Mike McDaniel now?
No. No, I saw that. So, like, I know you're probably going to disagree. Oh, you talked about this last week. You thought that he was going to be hot seat.
I think next year he has to prove that he can coach or not, or if not, you're going to have to make a decision on his future. Yeah,
I understand. And the reality is, I cover this league for a long time. I cover the entire league now. And we just came off a Monday where we saw five or six new coach openings, including guys who thought they had more time. You never had as much time as you think you have. For example, I cover Atlanta a lot. Arthur Smith thought he had more time. I talked to him a lot. I talked to the team a lot. He thought they had a rebuild plan coming in. The first 2 years of their team, they rebuilt. They thought they were going to – he signed a 6-year contract. He thought he was going to have at least 2 years after the rebuild, year 3 and 4, to get this thing right. And so year 3, instead of going to get a veteran quarterback, he said, hey, we're going to have our third-round pick, Desmond Ridder, do it and see if he can do it. If not, we'll go get a quarterback in 2024. They never got to 2024. They went 7-10 and probably the worst division in football. Ownership wasn't satisfied. Patience ran out. They're out. And so I'm not naive to say that timelines change. That being said, you can't fire every coach after 3 years just because they don't get what you want. I think there has to be some level of stability. And although Mike McDaniel does have flaws, he has some
flaws continue. So if the flaws continue,
I do not think that Mike McDaniel, I do not think Mike McDaniel is anywhere near the hot seat. I think that he is very
not right now. No, not right now. But if the same results again next year,
you're talking about they make the playoffs but lose the first round.
Yeah, I'm talking about the same results. He can't figure out challenges. He keeps abandoning the run. He can't call he can't adjust inside a game. His team flounders at the end of the season. You're going to tell me that he's not possibly going to get fired?
I don't think so. Just my opinion. I could be wrong. Like I said, I could be wrong. I would be absolutely shocked. Pretty much any circumstance other than like him doing something ridiculous, like not football related. But just about any other circumstance, I think that there's no way we're having a conversation about firing Mike McDaniel next year. But that's just my take. Okay. I think that the organization is very happy with him as a coach, very comfortable with him. And I think a lot of times we as media and we as a fan base can be a little bit of reactionary based on the current.
So when Brian Flores got fired because the front office thought, besides him being a dick, besides him being a dick in the building, they felt they gave him enough talent that he should have won more games. His problem was that he lost against all the quality teams in the first half, and then he piled on some of the wins in the back half against the bad teams. So they weren't impressed with that.
I think that the bigger – so obviously go ahead. Oh, sorry.
The front office feels they gave McDaniel more than enough talent because McDaniel has had more talent on both sides of the ball than any other coach we've seen here in the last 20 years. And if they feel, well, you should have won more. You should have won a playoff game, and you haven't in 3 years. And we gave you the people you needed. We've given you the depth and everything. So you don't feel that there could be a little bit of the same that he's underachieving?
No, I don't. I'm just going to call it what it is. I don't. We're in a completely different thought process there. I don't think there's any risk of Mike McDaniel losing his job in the next 12 months. That being said, I will say this. There's usually a trend that happens. If what you're saying happens and they fail again, typically the first step is you make changes within your staff. Very rarely.
Here.
Huh?
That should be this offseason.
I don't think there's – what changes do you make this offseason?
He desperately needs an OC.
You're saying Frank Smith's not doing a good job?
No. Frank Smith needs to call the plays.
So you're saying Mike McDaniel as the play caller is the issue?
I'm saying Mike McDaniel, the head coach, is the issue. He can't be a head coach and a play caller, Cam.
You're saying it's too much. You're saying he's got too much on his plate. Gotcha.
Is that not obvious? He's a complete.
I want to hear your perspective. Here's the thing. Oh, we have different perspectives, and so I in this basis want to hear your perspective.
He's a complete.
You want to hear mine.
The way I look at it, he's a complete fuck up on the sidelines.
Okay, I wouldn't say that, but that's your perspective.
Yeah, that's my perspective. He's a complete fuck up on the sidelines.
I think he definitely has some things he needs to work on.
You just said in this interview he can't adjust in game.
I think that's been a struggle of his.
That's a fireable offense in any coach at any level, high school, college, NFL. If you cannot adjust, then that
with him being a head coach.
That is enormous, my brother. That your career is over if you can't adjust.
I get it, and like I said, trust me. I work in the media in a national market where
I know it's contradictory what you just said.
No. Here, let me explain. Let me explain why. Let me explain why, and let me explain why I think that you're being a little contradictory here. Right? Give me a second here. Okay. I work in a media space where everyone has to have a hard take, right? Like everyone Monday morning, this team's the worst team in the world. This team's the best team in the world. Fire this coach. This is the coach of the year. This quarterback's elite. This quarterback stinks. It happens so much. And it has happened plenty with the quarterback that you love, Tua, right? And we've talked about how much the reactionary opinions are sometimes false narratives, right? And in particular for Tua, we talked about the importance of patience. He needed time, and he needed to be in an environment where he could succeed. And he also had to learn. Tua had to learn and get better within his own comfort. My thing with Mike McDaniel is that I think that what he is as a schemer, what he is as a confidence builder, as a motivator, is top level. There are weaknesses in his skill set. Last year, the big weakness that he admitted was he failed to run the ball with any frequency, right? And he got better. He's not perfect, as you just mentioned. He still had a game like last night where it's not consistent, but he went from 28th in rushing attempts to borderline top 10, right? So that is progress. This year, if the season ends on Saturday, like many people think, I think the big thing that we will talk to him about at the season end presser, and I assume he knows, is the ability to adjust in game when a defense throws a wrench at you, when a defense takes away your weapons, or when you lose a weapon like a Waddle or a Tyreek due to injury, right? I believe, and that's why I would give him time to spend this offseason in correcting that. And we come back next offseason and see how he's progressed in that level. And given what I've seen from him, I do have belief that he will grow in that capacity. I'm not willing to fire a head coach every time he fails in one aspect of his job.
But wait a minute. He didn't grow this year. He didn't stick to the run in key moments when he should have. He didn't learn his lesson. He ran more. Sure, he did. I get it. And I commend him for running more, but he still abandoned it in several games. In key moments, he would still abandon the run. He still never figured out challenges. He can adjust. He didn't adjust last year. He didn't adjust this year. He only adjusted a year later, like the Chargers. They stifled him, and then a year later, he had answers for it. You know, a year later, no, it has to be within a half or within a quarter or something. You've got to adjust. He still doesn't make great in-game decisions. You know, the Chubb thing, that was not a good in-game decision. Correct. Again, the way he calls plays, brother, a Chan is gouging them for 10 yards. You're going to call an option play?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on,
I get it. Trust me. So here's what I would say. It's interesting.
You're telling me that if the guy doesn't improve in any of those areas, like he didn't improve this year from last year, and he does all the same shit again next year, how are you keeping this guy?
Well, one, I think he will improve. I guess that's my overall point. I have the patience to let him improve.
Year one to year two, how would he improve in year three?
So let me say two things here. One, I think this conversation is interesting because we're on opposing sides here, but I also understand your point. And like I feel like, at least me, probably more than most folks in the media here, I question McDaniel on a regular game-to-game basis on his decisions. I was critical with them on the Bradley Chubb decision and questioned them to the way that he probably did not love. The fact that I'm asking, why did you keep him out on the field? Did you change your process? Did you change your process?
You asked it so classy.
You got to, right? Yeah, no,
dude, it was a fucking masterpiece. I just want you to.
I've done this for a few years.
In a respectful way. When you asked it, I was like, "Wow, that's good."
I've done this for a little bit. There's ways to do it without. I know a lot of fans are like, "Why don't you be hard on the coach?" That doesn't get you anywhere if you're just like, "Why do you suck?" Like nobody's going to answer you that question. You have to word it in a way where you get your question out, and he still feels a desire to answer the question. And so I feel like I have been critical in asking questions to get answers to these questions that fans want to know. That being said, I know how this league works, and fair or not fair. The big thing that McDaniel has going for them is that he has, I'll use this word, saved the quarterback. The most important player on the team, he has saved him from what looked like despair.
Right.
Uplifted his confidence. Quarterback loves him. He uplifted his game to where he leads the NFL in passing yards. He's a Pro Bowl starting quarterback. Number two, the offense is incredible. They are scoring 70 points. They're putting seats in the stands. They're a top talk item on every single talk show, right? These are things that don't get you playoff wins, but when you talk about ownership, the one thing they love and they will put up with is great offense. If you got a bad offense and a great defense, that's a clear road to getting canned. But if you got a great offense, your quarterback is looking good and playing high level yardage and stat football, it is hard for the owner to say, I don't like him. And Mike's likable. And so that to me, along with what I said of I think he'll get better in some of his flaws, is why I don't see any reasonable route of why he would be fired within the next year. Now, time changes all. 2 years from now, I think maybe that's a conversation. If we're 2 years from now and it's still the same conversation, I think you start to have a little bit more, but I don't think we're
4 years of the same shit. You better be changing.
Yeah. But I just think that what Mike McDaniel's done, having the top scoring offense, saving Tua, bringing some scheme changes, and desperately bringing an offense that this team has wanted, and what he's done for the confidence for folks, I think that far overshadows in Steve Ross and Tom Garfinkel and all the decision makers' minds than some in-game struggles and a late season collapse. That doesn't mean they like it, but I think it overshadows it to me.
All right. I know we got to go. One more thing before I let you go, because I know we got Manny Navarro waiting here. But as much as I'm the number one Tua guy, I have to say, unfortunately, the way he's played and some of the decisions he's made with the turnovers, you can't give him a contract this offseason. You're going to have to let him play it out and then negotiate next year. You have him under control and you can tag him. And I don't care if he gets mad or not, but you got to get that bugaboo of turnovers out of him. Because
that's a very interesting point, and I think that's something we'll talk about on Friday because it's going to be a bad habit. It's a very interesting conversation because I'll tell you what, from what I understand, Tua and Tua's people are expecting a contract extension offer this offseason. And so that's going to be a very difficult conversation to tell the quarterback who you told all you got to do is stay healthy that, know what? We still need to see more. We still don't believe in you yet to give you that. And not saying you're wrong. I think there's a lot of reason to say, hey, maybe we need to see more, but that's going to be a hard conversation to have after he put up a Pro Bowl season, stayed healthy all year.
Yeah.
We still don't believe we've seen enough to give you an extension.
I believe in the kid.
I was like, I'm glad I don't have to have that conversation.
I believe in the kid, but we're getting into this little rut where he's making bad decisions, and I think McDaniel's a bad influence on him now.
Whoa, yeah. He's a bad influence. All right, we got a lot to talk about Friday.
While he has saved him, he's also burying him in the process because he makes it harder on his quarterback. Throwing fades to midget receivers, throwing to double and triple coverage because you're dying to get it to Tyreek because you're so Tyreek, intense. and he's become Tyreek intense himself, and he's forcing it there. And I think that's become an issue for him, unfortunately. And so I think that he's got to get that little bugaboo out of him. And McDaniel has to do a better job, because we'll get into it. But, like, you know, Tua, you go back 2 years with Flo, and week 15 and 18, I was doing this while we were talking, against the Pats and the Jets, 7 different receivers. I needed to see variety. When he didn't even have an offense and offensive coordinators, he could spread the ball around. Here with this guy who's a genius, he doesn't spread it around enough, and they've got to do a better job. So we'll get into that on Friday.
All right.
Okay. All right. Follow him on Twitter at Cameron Wolfe. Catch his exceptional work at the NFL Network, and catch him doing his thing twice a week here with the KSDT CPA Miami Dolphins Report. Thank you, Cam, as always. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
You got it. Great conversation. KSDT CPAs, they are hiring, by the way. Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. They've got offices there and an office now in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, if you need your personal taxes, tax season, I saw where the IRS says it starts on the 29th. Tax season starts. So get ready for tax season. Use that QR code. Reach out to our friends at KSDT CPAs. And also for your business, as you know, for businesses, you need that tax guidance all year long. They're right there for you. A phone call away. Call them 305-670-3370.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.